Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hey everyone, welcome back. There wasn't much to talk about yesterday, so I skipped yesterday, but I'm going to talk about the spoilers for today and yesterday, and have a more full, I guess, video for all of y'all. Let's get into it. Bedrock Tortoise. As long as it's your turn, you give your entire board hexproof. Damage is assigned via toughness rather than power. You want creatures with big butts.
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Then can still attack. If you want to play walls, you'll need another piece to enable them. Otherwise, if you do go the walls route, they'll be effective blockers, because not only will they kind of stuff everything out, but you'll actually kill your opponent's creatures if they attack you. Get Lost, a really efficient removal spell. I feel like they keep pushing the boundary a little bit more and more. Last time they printed something like this was, I forget what it's called, but I play it every now and then. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then you give a clue. This one now includes an enchantment. Soon it'll just say permanent for 2 mana, and then you get some kind of token out of the deal. It awards 2 map tokens. It lets target creature explore. Since it's not hard card advantage, like the clue tokens or ramping, I actually don't mind giving maps. They're either leaving it on top, drawing a land, or ditching it to their graveyard. This is in Spanish. Whenever you gain life, explore, then destroy all creatures if her power is exactly 20. You can get this 20 power. It could be a little hard to control once you get near to 20. Seems like a really hard task to do. I don't like this card really that much. The ward is also pretty negligible. They'll just kill it and pay the 3 life and make you start all over from scratch. Whisper Silk Cloak's getting a full art treatment. I don't think it has yet, but it looks pretty sweet. Looks like they're kind of blending in with the wall back there.
Meme.
Colossal Hammer looks very colossal. I like it. I don't see a whole lot of decks in Commander running this, but I imagine the people in Modern would like this card a lot. Wedding Ring, this thing looks pretty sick. More along the lines of advice is pick the weakest player to pair yourself with, because if you give it to the strongest player, you're just going to further increase the deficit of you catching up and beating that player. And hopefully the person you marry doesn't win because of you. Or the way you could get around Wedding Ring is you gain life or draw cards on everyone else's turn, and then your partner doesn't get anything from you. In that scenario, throw this on the strongest player who is going to be doing those things on their turn. Stalactite Stalker. This guy is really sick. 60 card limited formats that are playing mono black are going to be really strong, because we already saw the 2-drop that acts like a Tarmogoyf from my last video, and now we're getting this guy. He is super strong because on your end step, if you descended, put a +1/+1 counter. Descended means you put a permanent into your graveyard, some shape, way, or form. It also has a sack clause. It lets you give something -X/-X, where X is his power. I just feel like just the +1/+1 counter trigger and the menace is really relevant on its own. If this thing gets too big and out of hand too fast, then you have a valve to get some more value out of this thing and kill someone else's creature and trade. In limited formats and 60 card formats, trading 1 for multiple cards is super powerful. That's what this guy will force people to do. Since it has menace, they'll make your opponents commit 2 creatures to blocking this. They'll probably lose something they don't want to lose. And then they'll trade again with the sacrifice ability. This is a brutal goblin. Poetic Ingenuity. This one's in Japanese. Whenever one or more dinosaurs you control attack, create a equal amount of treasure tokens. That's pretty dope. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 3/1 dino. This ability only triggers once. It's nice that both abilities work with itself. Obviously the stronger half is the upper one, where you create treasures equal to the total number of dinosaurs attacking. I feel like dinosaurs suffer from their expensive costs, and if you can mitigate the greatest weakness of a dinosaur deck, people will appreciate that. Polani's Hatcher. It's a haste enabler for dinosaurs. On ETB, you make 2 egg tokens, and then on combat, if you control 1 or more eggs, you get to sack a single egg to make a 3/3 dino out of the deal. This really reminds me of the 5-drop Regisar, I think it's called. It also gave haste for 5 mana, and it also made a 3/3 on ETB. This is like a slightly better version, I guess you could say. It just feels like almost like a carbon copy. Instead of getting 1 dinosaur, you're getting 2 with extra steps, I guess you could say. Terror Tide. It's a 4-drop board wipe. It counts the number of permanents in your graveyard and gives everything -X/-X till the end of turn. I personally love -X/-X abilities because it gets around indestructible to like flawless maneuver and heroic intervention. In EDH, I don't run those anymore because Toxic Deluge just still wrecks you. I've been favoring more of the phasing out of your board kind of stuff, like Guardian of Faith and Clever Concealment. Or Teferi's Protection if you have the money to throw around. The metagame, you could kind of feel it in this card. Sunken Citadel. It's got a couple abilities. Enter tap, choose a color, and then you can tap it to add 1 mana of chosen color, and then add 2 of the chosen color, only to be used for active abilities of a land source. There are tons of lands out there in Magic that would appreciate that. I don't like tap lands, so I don't see myself ever running this, but if I was ever playing a lands deck and they have abilities outside of just tapping for mana, sure, why not? Ooh, Direfleet Flail. It looks like there's a backside too. 1 mana and 1 colorless to equip a creature gets +2/+0, and craft with 1 or more artifacts for 3 colorless and 2 red mana. Turns into Direfleet Cannon, which is another artifact equipment. Equip creature gets +3/+0. When it attacks, you may sack another artifact to deal damage equal to its power to target creature. Single target removal. I like that the equip cost stays to be 1. I like how on the front side it's the pirate wielding a flail, and on the back side they obviously decided to put their flail inside the cannon. It's pretty sick. Whenever it attacks, if you don't control another dinosaur, put a stun counter on it. It's got to be like that because it's a 6/6. You gotta make it a little fair for that efficient of a cost. In limited formats, this would be pretty scary. I would not be wanting to be hit by a 6/6. It kind of forces people to trade cards with it, and that just makes it even better. Terran's Journal. Sacrifice another artifact or creature, draw a card, and then you can discard your hand to transform this journal. Well, the nice thing is if you don't have any cards in hand or you have a bunch of crappy cards that you don't care to discard, that activation's always on the table. It's also really cheap to activate. 2 mana is nothing. Taps for a black, or you could tap it to cast a creature from your graveyard, and it gains a finality counter. That's pretty sick. Going back to the journal side, if you have a grip full of creatures, you could discard them all and then have fodder for this activation ability. That's pretty nice. That, and you could use it to just reanimate whatever. I'd probably run this in my black decks where your commander means a lot to you, because you essentially get to avoid some commander attacks. You let your commander go to the graveyard, you recast it with the land side activation, and then if it dies again, then you just put it in the command zones.
I live, I die, I live again.
So you made people work twice as hard to add some cost to the command zone. Met Zalantli the Great Door. Should call it the Great Title. Activate, draw a card, discard. For 4 mana, you transform it. Activate only if there are 4 or more permanent types in your graveyard. So it's like a more difficult version of Delirium, because there's only a handful of permanents out there in Magic. Add X of any color where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Ooh, that's really good. So on the first half, you care about permanent types. On the back half, you do not care about permanent types. You just want a lot of permanents in your graveyard, and then this will tap for a bunch of mana. I could see this being an expensive card. The tapping ability to draw and discard will help you get to those permanent types. But like I said, it's a little challenging. You got artifacts, battles, creatures, enchantments, lands, and planeswalkers. So there's 6 total permanents in the game. You need 4 of them to get there, which forces you to build split among those permanents so you have a greater chance of finding those cards. Sovereign Iconic How. Sorry if I butchered that. It's the best I could do.
My mouth's bleeding, Bert! My mouth's bleeding!
This thing cares about the stat blocks of your creatures. It doesn't affect it itself because the power has to be greater than the toughness, which is why they probably did that on purpose. But based on the difference in power to toughness, you put that many +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. Only the cat has to attack, and then it puts counters on your whole board. I know there's a lot of like vanilla creatures in these colors with significant stat blocks in favor of power. Could be a unique deck build, especially because most of them are dirt cheap. Alternate version of this looks pretty sick. Got the naughtiest of limbs. The musculature is really scary. Threefold Thunderhulk. Enters with 3 counters on it. When it enters or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifacts equal to its power. So you make a 3/3, make 3 more 1/1s, and then that's basically 6 power for 7 mana. Then, for 2 mana, sack another artifact to put another +1/+1 counter on itself. So that's pretty dope. You make it bigger, and then once you go to combat, you get to put more 1/1 gnomes into play. Makes sense. Alkazat's the Deepest Betrayal. 4/4 with flying lifelink, Bat God. Whenever it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent can't you draw. I love cards that do this. Normally, the biggest drawback to discard decks is once your opponents don't have any cards in hand, you run out of things to do, you know what I mean? Because you're so committed to emptying people's hands. But this gives you something in that scenario where they don't have anything to discard. So if you have 3 opponents that don't have any cards in their hand anymore, you get to draw 3 in a commander game. Let's see what else it does. It's got 2 more paragraphs on this thing. Whenever an opponent discards a land, create a 1/1 bat with flying. When it dies, you flip it over. See what the backside does. You can flip it back for 3 mana if a player has 1 or fewer cards. Obviously, if you're playing the deck right, they should always have 1 or fewer cards in their hand. That's a really sick legendary creature. I like it a lot. I also like things with lifelink from the command zone, because a cheesy thing I like to do in Commander is I run things like Hatred, and if you can't block me, I invest 17 life, kill someone with commander damage, and then gain it all back. That's one of my favorite things to do. Maybe you should do it yourself. Give it a whirl. It's like one of those really low-hanging fruit. You have nothing much to lose. I guess you lose a potential friendship out of the deal.
We can't have that.
Unstable Glyph Bridge. Has an ETB trigger. You pick a creature from each player that has power 2 or less, and then everything else gets destroyed. Has craft with artifacts. Probably has one of the easier activations because it only requires 1 additional artifact. Turns into this golem creature. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn, they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Each opponent attacks you or a planeswalker you control can't cast spells. It's kind of like the White Angel. I forget what it's called, but you have a choice. You either prefer your combat step or you prefer casting things on your turn. You get one or the other with this in play. Really annoying Hate Bear. Deeproot Pilgrimage. Whenever 1 or more non-token merfolk become tapped, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token. Because it says 1 or more, you want to stagger the tapping if you can, so you could obviously make the most amount of 1/1 tokens possible. Preacher of Schism has an attack clause. When you attack the most life or tide, make a 1/1 vampire. It's kind of like Dethrone, but only for a token. When it attacks while you have the most life or tied for the most life, draw a card and you lose a life. Too many times have I played like a Dethrone mechanic like Marchesa, and you end up the leader in terms of the life gain, and you're not getting any more value out of your cards. But this obviously rewards you for being behind and rewards you for being ahead. I like the design. It's not a feel-bad card at all. Bloodletter of Aklazats. 4-drop flying. If an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. I love multipliers. I'm also a fan of Wound Reflection and like Group Slug kind of decks. This will fit nicely. Triple black could be a little challenging if you have a budget mana base. Unless you're in mono black, then it's like no big deal. Pairs up nicely with Grey Merchant if you just have this in Grey Merchant, because this doesn't need the see your end step. Everyone will lose 10 life. I think you would actually gain 30 back, because Grey Merchant specifically says gain life equal to life loss, and this would modify the life loss, so that's pretty sick. That's it for today. I hope you all had a good time. If you stuck around, obviously you liked what you saw, so subscribe. I do plenty other things on this channel other than just talk about spoilers. I mostly like doing spoilers because it lets me update the old memory of cards, so then when I have to play against these things myself, it's not a big surprise. And I also like to get my mind jogging of like thinking about why my opponents would play what they play. People put cards in their decks for a reason, so you should never judge someone based on their card choices. You should just assume it's to do something terrible to you. I just want to say thank you for sticking around and watching. I'd like to thank my subscribers. I greatly appreciate everything you do. So have a great one. Bye.